It was one of those bitterly cold December nights when the city seemed to hold its breath. The streets glistened with frost, and the wind blew sharp enough to sting your face. Holiday lights blinked across storefronts, and carol music spilled faintly from the shops that were still open. People hurried along the sidewalks, their faces buried in scarves, clutching coffee cups, their minds already home with warmth and family. But for 11-year-old Jamie, home wasn't a word that brought comfort anymore, it was something he watched other people have. Jamie sat curled up behind a bakery on 7th Street, the smell of fresh bread teasing his empty stomach. He had been there for almost a week, surviving on the leftover crumbs the baker sometimes threw away in the mornings. His clothes were thin and torn, his shoes too small for his feet, and his blanket, a tattered, faded piece of cloth, barely kept the cold from biting through his bones. But he never complained. He just hugged his only friend close, Rusty, a little brown dog with sad eyes and a wagging tail that refused to give up on the world. Rusty was all Jamie had left after life had taken everything else. His mother, soft-spoken and gentle, had passed away from pneumonia 2 winters ago. His father, once a hard-working mechanic, had spiraled into drinking and despair after her death. One night, he had simply walked out of the small apartment they'd rented and never came back. Jamie waited for days, but the food ran out, and so did hope. When the landlord threw him out, he took Rusty and wandered the city streets until the alley behind the bakery became his shelter. He'd learned to blend into the city's noise. People walked past him every day, some glancing quickly before looking away, others pretending not to see him at all. Jamie didn't blame them. He had seen kindness before, real kindness, from his mother, who once gave her only pair of gloves to an old woman on a snowy night. "When you give, Jamie," she used to say, "give from your heart, not for a thank you." He remembered her words every time his stomach growled and he shared the last of his bread with Rusty. That evening, the bakery was closing. Mr. Parker, the baker, switched off the lights inside while the warm scent of cinnamon rolls drifted into the alley. Jamie watched quietly, pulling Rusty closer to stay warm. His breath formed small clouds in the air. He'd gotten used to sleeping on the hard ground, but tonight, it felt colder than usual, colder in a way that made him tremble. He tried to distract himself by talking softly to Rusty. "You know, Rust," he whispered, stroking the dog's fur, "maybe one day we'll have a real home again. Maybe Mom's watching us right now." Rusty licked his hand as if agreeing. That's when headlights flickered against the bakery wall. A car pulled up slowly to the curb, and a woman stepped out. She looked frustrated, brushing her hair from her face, and spoke into her phone. "Yeah, it just stopped running. I'm outside Parker's bakery," she said, her voice tired but calm. "I'll wait for the tow truck." Her name was Clara. She was in her early 30s, dressed neatly in a business coat, her breath forming mist in the air. She worked as a social worker at a local community center, a woman who spent her days helping others find hope again, though lately she had been feeling burned out. She'd seen too much pain, too many people lost in the cracks of life, and sometimes she wondered if kindness even mattered anymore. As she ended her call, she noticed movement near the corner of the bakery. A small shape, a boy, curled up beside a scruffy dog. For a moment, she thought her eyes were playing tricks on her. But when she stepped closer, the reality hit her hard. The child was shivering, his lips blue, his hands tucked deep into his sleeves. The dog lifted its head, tail wagging weakly. "Hey," she said softly, kneeling down a few feet away so she wouldn't scare him. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" Jamie's body stiffened. He hadn't heard a kind voice directed at him in weeks. Most people just walked faster when they saw him. He didn't answer, just tightened his arms around Rusty. "I'm not here to hurt you," Clara continued gently. "You look cold. What's your name?" "Jamie," he murmured, his voice barely audible. "Hi, Jamie, I'm Clara." She smiled softly, trying to meet his eyes. "Is this your dog?" He nodded. "His name's Rusty. He's a good boy, I can tell," she said, glancing at the dog's wagging tail. "Do you stay here every night?" Jamie hesitated before answering. "It's warm behind the bakery sometimes. They throw out bread." Clara's chest tightened. She could see how thin he was, his cheeks hollow, his hands trembling not just from cold but exhaustion. She took off her scarf and gently extended it toward him. "Here, take this. It's clean, I promise." He looked at her, then at Rusty, then back at her hand. Slowly, he reached out and took it. "Thank you," he whispered. Something shifted inside Clara. That small, "thank you," hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't pity she felt, it was something deeper. She'd spent years helping strangers fill out forms, find shelter, get food stamps, but this moment felt raw and human, a reminder of why she started doing this work in the first place. She wanted to help him, but she knew if she pushed too hard, he'd run. So she stayed there, sitting on the cold sidewalk beside him, talking softly. She told him how her car had broken down, how she also hated the cold, and how her grandmother used to make the best cinnamon rolls in the world. Jamie listened quietly, a faint smile flickering across his face for the first time in days. As the tow truck arrived 15 minutes later, Clara stood up but didn't leave right away. She crouched again and said, "Jamie, I work at a place that helps kids like you. We have food, warm beds, and even rooms for pets. You and Rusty could come with me, just for tonight. No one will hurt you, I promise." Jamie looked torn. He wanted to trust her, but life had taught him to be careful. Rusty barked softly, pressing his paw on Jamie's arm, as if giving him permission. "Do they really let dogs in?" Jamie asked cautiously. Clara smiled. "They do when they're good boys like Rusty." Jamie hesitated one last time before nodding. Clara extended her hand, not forcing, just waiting. Slowly, the boy took it. His fingers were ice cold. She helped him up, wrapped her coat around his shoulders, and together they walked toward her car as the tow truck driver worked. For the first time in a long time, Jamie wasn't walking alone. The streets were still cold, but somehow, they didn't feel as cruel anymore. He didn't know it yet, but that single act of kindness, on a night when everyone else looked away, would change both of their lives forever. Clara drove slowly through the quiet streets, glancing at the small boy sitting beside her. Jamie was half asleep, his head resting against Rusty's fur. The heater hummed softly, filling the car with warmth that felt almost unreal after the bitter cold of the alley. Clara's heart clenched every time she looked at him, his small hands, dirt-smudged face, and that exhausted stillness that didn't belong on a child. She had seen so many kids like him in her work, yet somehow, Jamie felt different. There was something in his eyes when he'd looked up at her, something quiet but strong, like a spark refusing to die. She remembered her grandmother's words, "Real kindness isn't about saving someone, it's about reminding them they're worth saving." When they arrived at the shelter, the building looked modest but welcoming. It was called the Haven Home, a community-run shelter for women and children. Warm light spilled from its windows, and the faint sound of laughter drifted through the air. Clara parked the car, turned to Jamie, and smiled. "We're here," she said softly. Jamie blinked, staring at the building. "It's really warm inside." "Yes, sweetheart," she nodded. "And there's food for both of you." Rusty's ears perked up at the word food, which made Jamie chuckle for the first time in weeks. Clara helped him out of the car and guided him toward the entrance. When they stepped inside, the smell of soup and bread filled the air. The staff greeted Clara warmly, they knew her well. "This is Jamie," Clara said to the receptionist. "And this is Rusty. We'll need a bed in the family room tonight, and a little something for his furry friend too." The receptionist smiled and nodded. Within minutes, Jamie and Rusty were wrapped in warmth, literally and figuratively. A volunteer brought Jamie a clean hoodie, sweatpants, and socks, while another placed a small bowl of dog food on the floor for Rusty, who wagged his tail wildly before devouring it. Jamie ate slowly, savoring every bite of the vegetable soup and buttered bread as if he couldn't quite believe it was real. Clara sat across from him, just watching. It wasn't pity, she admired how quietly grateful he was, how even now, he tore a piece of bread and placed it beside Rusty. After dinner, Clara led him to a small room with 2 bunks and soft blankets. Jamie looked around, wide-eyed. "Is it really okay for me to stay here?" he asked. "Of course," she replied gently. "You can stay as long as you need to." He hesitated, then whispered, "Even Rusty." "Especially Rusty," she said with a grin. For the first time in months, Jamie slept deeply that night. No freezing wind, no noise, no fear, just the steady rhythm of Rusty's breathing beside him. Clara watched him for a moment before quietly closing the door. She leaned against the hallway wall, her throat tightening with emotion. In a city full of people rushing past one another, she had finally stopped, and it had mattered. The next morning, Jamie woke to the smell of pancakes. He ran his fingers through Rusty's fur and smiled. "We made it, buddy," he whispered. Clara joined him for breakfast. They talked. really talked, for the first time. Jamie told her about his mom and how she used to hum while folding laundry. He told her about his dad and how things changed after she died. Clara listened, never interrupting, letting him take his time. When he finished, she placed her hand on his. "You're a brave boy, Jamie. No one should go through what you did, but you made it through. That says something about you." Jamie looked down. "Sometimes I think people don't see me. Like I'm invisible." Clara's voice softened. "You're not invisible anymore." That afternoon, Clara arranged for Jamie to see a doctor and contacted child services, but she stayed close, ensuring he wasn't treated like just another case file. Days turned into weeks, and Jamie began to open up more. He helped the volunteers set tables, read books from the small library, and started attending a nearby public school. He was behind in studies but determined to catch up. One snowy evening, Clara found him sitting in the shelter's garden with Rusty. "Hey, you two," she said, wrapping her coat tighter. "What are you doing out here in the cold?" Jamie smiled shyly. "Just thinking about how one night changed everything." "What do you mean?" she asked. He looked up at her, his eyes reflecting the glow of the porch lights. "If your car hadn't broken down, I don't know what would have happened. Maybe I wouldn't be here. Maybe Rusty wouldn't either. It's crazy how something bad turned into something good." Clara knelt beside him. "You know what I think, Jamie. Sometimes, life has a strange way of leading us where we're meant to be. Maybe my car didn't break down by accident." He grinned, hugging Rusty. "Then maybe it was fate." Over the months, their bond deepened. Clara became more than just a helper, she became family. On weekends, she'd take Jamie and Rusty to the park. He loved feeding the ducks, playing soccer, and laughing like the child he'd almost forgotten how to be. The shelter staff often noticed how Clara glowed around him. One day, the director pulled her aside and said, "You've done more than your job, Clara. You've changed that boy's world." Clara smiled, tears filling her eyes. "He changed mine too." A year later, Jamie stood on stage at his school assembly, reading an essay titled, "The Night Kindness Found Me." His voice trembled at first, but then grew stronger. People think kindness is about giving things. But real kindness is when someone sees you, when everyone else walks by. That night, Miss Clara didn't just give me food or a bed. She gave me something bigger. She made me believe I mattered again. The room fell silent. Clara sat in the audience, her heart swelling with pride and emotion. When the applause came, it was thunderous. After the ceremony, Jamie ran to her, clutching the small certificate he'd won. "I did it," he said, beaming. She hugged him tightly. "You did more than that, Jamie. You showed everyone what kindness really means." Years later, Jamie would grow up to run his own community center, one that offered shelter to kids and their pets. He named it Rusty's Haven in honor of his loyal friend who had stayed by his side through everything. And on the wall near the entrance, framed in glass, hung a simple quote written in his own handwriting. "Greater than, one act of kindness may not change the whole world, but it can change someone's world completely." Every time Clara visited, she would smile at that quote, her eyes misting with pride. She had set out that cold December night just trying to get home, but what she found instead was a reason to believe in humanity again. And Jamie, the boy who once hid behind a bakery box, never forgot the night real kindness saw him for the first time. Because sometimes, all it takes to change a life is stopping long enough to care.